to the person that the weapon.
Okay, yeah.
get started. Call the meeting to order. Doug, could you please take the roll call?
Sure. One second. Commissioner Conroy,
Here.
Vice Chair Jesty,
Here?
Commissioner Woodham,
Here.
Commissioner Sherbin.
Here.
Absent is Commissioner Marin, Commissioner Castle, and Commissioner Samples.
Okay, item C, salute to the flag. Let's stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item D, approve the order of agenda. Any ayes or noes?
I move to approve the order of the agenda.
Second.
So agenda is approved. Next item, blue folder items. Doug, any items?
There's no blue folders items tonight.
So nothing for approval then?
Yeah, there's no blue folders items, so we can move on to the consent calendar, the next item.
Okay, so I move that the items be approved.
Sure, there's nothing to approve for the blue folder, so you can move on to the consent calendar. So the consent calendar tonight, there's only one item, which is the affidavit of posting for the meeting. So if you can just get a motion to approve.
Move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So documents approved. The consent calendar,
Yeah, the consent calendar is done, so we move on to the next item, which is excluded consent calendar. There's nothing there. And then we'll move on to public participation. In regards to public participation, there's no Zoom comments and there are no e-comments.
We're moving right along, aren't we?
Yeah. Do we have any items for
okay,
continue from
item
previous agendas?
F1, the approval of affidavit of posting for the regular budget and finance commission meeting of September 14th. So I move that the meetings, is that the minutes of the meeting?
Okay, sorry. So the affidavit is part of the consent calendar. You guys have already voted on that. We're on items I, which is items continued from prior meeting, I believe is the title of that. There's nothing there. And so now we're on item J, which is items for discussion. And we do have one item for discussion, and we'll start with that, okay?
So any public participation for non-agenda items?
We already
Any
covered that.
comments?
Yeah, we
We're on
covered
item
that. There's no comments and there's no e-comments, so we're just on the discussion items now,
Oh,
okay?
okay, no excluded items.
We covered all of those at the same time. We covered F through H at the same time.
Good evening to the commission. As we focus on item J1, this is your proposed budget status reporting and capital improvement program overview. one of the things, this is from previous action where we talked about, and I kind of looked at as we kind of come on board and establish this relationship with this commission and kind of get what you deemed, my flair on things. And so one of the things I noticed is that we don't have a structural report that comes out quarterly telling you some of the performance of the revenues and expenditures, fund balance and capital at a very 30,000 foot view, right? We don't want to get you in the weeds and make it a super long night for you, but we want to give you some transparency. We want to make sure that we acknowledge to you some drivers. And so today it was really, we're not going to delve in just because this is a monthly, the monthly numbers and we're not completely posted. The first real report will be October 1st so that we can give you the full Q1 report of 23-24 budget and its performance. However, the purpose of this today is to kind of walk through the slides so you can get acclimated with them, the information. If you hate it, we have time to change it. If you want to elaborate something, we just really wanted your feedback on this so that on October 1st, the October meeting, you will get this same report now with statistical items as you requested, and we'll go over them so that we can have a conversation and again, give you a good synopsis so that we're proactive as we get ready for mid-year budget, and we're just having this beautiful relationship all the way up, and instead of being reactive and having surprises or anything, it really is a great commitment as well from the finance team that it helps us just be real live time, right? And just kind of make sure that that budget is running and trending like it should be. We can acknowledge something, give you more data and time so that you don't feel so rushed or, you have all the information that you need in order to make educated decisions and recommendations to the council and for the city of Redondo. So obviously here's your proposed template. This is the presentation for highlights to the city of Redondo Beach. It'll look like this with an overview of your major revenue and expenditure rates and burn rates for the first, it says 2 months, but ideally it's a quarter that we're trying to report. And it'll be comparative to the same time the previous year to just give you some trending and analysis. What are we doing, right? And it'll highlight this activity and then kind of give you an idea how we're trending, how we're tracking, and let you kind of review that and drive. I will recommend to this commission to remember to look at it from a strategical point, which is what your objective is here, right? And let us take care of all the garbage, as far as all the, the pennies and cents. But we want to really put you in a position where you're looking at it and you're not in there worried about, oh my God, 12 cents are missing, right? We really want you to see those big strategic moves. Are we just naturally trending as a city where we should be? And it allows you to give us some recommendations on how you'd like the budget and where you see maybe some opportunity to provide to the council. Next slide, please. One of the highlights we wanted to do is we wanted to go back to basics just because I don't like to assume. And again, we're establishing this relationship as your new finance director. I wanted to give you the types of funds that we have and what does that mean and attach a number to it. I'm sure you've seen the budget and you're like, wow, okay, measure R, whatever, this is fund 215. But as you can see, you'll be listed the type of fund that we have. What's the purpose of that fund? What does it mean when you hear, hey, a special rev fund? Does that mean we could just buy that Ferrari or not, right? So we listed a quick purpose for it and how we've structured it so that way, as you navigate through the budget, the ACFR, you'll have more reference and be more acclimated and comfortable with it, okay? So going down, here's your general and special revenues. Of course, there's specific functions and purposes, and then what our funds correlate to that are, which of course, the general fund is your 100, and then your special revenue funds are in the 200 series, ranging from 202 at the state tax fund, gas tax fund, all the way to 258 in the CalPERS reserve. Next slide continues on with your capital funds. Their purpose, of course, for capital improvements, things like construction, and we give you some, storm drain, sewer, things of that nature. Your enterprise funds, which I call the small factories of a city, which are their intent and purpose is to provide a service. and run operations. They run similar to a private business, right? Reinvest all their profit if anything is done, but that's not their objective, is to reinvest in capital to continue providing the service to our community. And those are starting at the 216 Transit Fund and into your 600s, all the way up to 603 for wastewater. Your internal service funds is just that, right? It's financing of those goods and services between departments and agencies within our city. We list those as well. Some of them are like your self-insurance fund, where your liability and workers' comp costs go in. Information technology, emergency comm, you found that for radio repairs and things of that nature. And of course, major facility repairs. Finally, fiduciary funds. These are, of course, things that we hold as a city. They're a benefit to parties outside of the city, but we're somewhat of a trustee, right? Pass through. Some of it would be like your public financing authority, the obligation retirement fund, which has a weird name and you would think it has to deal with retirement. We constantly get confused with that, but that is your redevelopment fund. And then your low mod income housing. And that's enlisted there from 940 to 971. Next slide, please. Here's what you're going to start looking at. And, this is as good as it gets with accounting's getting graphical and creative with color and jazz here. But you're going to be listing we're going to list for you your general fund tax revenues. Those are your medical major funds in the general fund, property tax, sales tax, augmentation, UUT. You're familiar with that. And as you can see, here's where you're going to start getting your 23-24 budget, your current year, comparative at the same time at 22-23, your previous fiscal year, and our collection rates at that snapshot and point and where we are right now. Some of the features that when I go over them in October for you that we're going to enhance is I'll have drivers, because you got to remember that certain things not only get posted at a cyclical interval, we may be behind just because sometimes the state, believe it or not, runs a little slower than we want. There could be other mitigating factors as to why our collection rates, and I'm going to clarify those if there's something outside of the norm.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
The actuals look like they're a very small part of the total budget. Is it just a quarter's worth of actuals against a full year's budget? You're looking at the two columns?
Yes, sir. It is full year budget to just at that snapshot. So that could be if you'd like to see a comparative to at that point of percent of budget where we're at, to make that delta narrowed, we could do that.
I was just going to say it's hard to relate 3 months against an annual budget in terms of trying to understand where we are relative to where we should be.
I had the same
Again,
request.
just a personal-
No, I had the same request. We should be comparing the budget for
same
that
period.
period to the actuals for the period.
See, our plan worked perfectly. This is what it is. We got a lot of eyes there and gives us that feedback. We want it to be valuable to you. Absolutely. No
It looks
disagreement there.
terrific layout-wise, though. Very nice job.
So same across, we are presenting them to you not only in text, but then your major categories, license and permits. We'll footnote for you in this through the presentation what that involves, right? Just to give you a brief synopsis when we first start off with you, and then as you get acclimated, you won't get the same brief every time. Charges for services, and then of course, all other revenues. And as you can tell, we footnoted that so you knew what does it mean. I personally hate the words other miscellaneous, so we want to define them for you. So there, you'll see intergovernmental revenue, things like fines and forfeiture, investment earnings, rents, reimbursements, and donations are things that go into that all other revenue. And then finally, we have special revenue funds, capital and enterprise, and internal and fiduciary. Your major funds, we're reporting them just to give you a trending of where they are in relation to their performance comparative to budget. Yes, sir.
Can you go back to that last one real quick? So is collection rate supposed to be actuals as a percentage of the full year budget, or what are we looking at?
Yes.
there? Okay, so I know that these line items probably aren't done on a linear basis, but even so, if this is 2 months, then wouldn't we, if it were a linear basis, we'd be expecting roughly 16, 17% the collection rate? And we're not
Yes.
seeing that.
So we went to check for property taxes because at this time, we should be at that rate. There's a slow in the receivable that we're expecting, the tranches coming in and waiting to post for that. So those are things that we will officially footnote for you when we have trends like that that are not aligning as it normally is. Again, we didn't want to get too granular, this just go around, because,
This format, right?
yeah, it's just
Okay.
format right now, but we would have answers to these questions on a linear level, especially when I see, I'm going to establish those thresholds for you when I see something that I'm like, hey, take a note here, we're behind, because sometimes, for example, gas tax, we may have received it, but they are two quarters behind, in us getting that payment. I'll tell you that when we see those huge anomalies, so, but it's
Perfect.
exactly.
Yeah, just another question, and along the same lines as my prior one. Please make a recommendation back to us on how you think that the data should be presented, because I'm looking at it now, I'm saying, if you've got a full year's budget and you've got an asymmetrical burn rate, it's virtually, you're not getting any real input from it. If you've got a budget of $100,000 and you don't spend anything till the 11th month, everything looks fine until the 11th month. So as I say, I don't have a solution for that, but I'm just posing that as a problem that we would have in trying to analyze it.
Sure, I mean, I would add
So
the color.
there's not an easy way, I think, if you pick 3 months of actuals against 3 months worth of budget, it really doesn't get you, I think, what we would, a tool that we could use to really kind of analyze it. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, so, I've kind of sat, and have thought about it, and the way I was going to align it to, although it's very hard, right, just picking a period, what it does tell us is that our trends could measure it to 5 years back, 3 years back, are we pushing that way, right, and what's causing anything? I am not going to ever deliver, nor would I, just giving you the standard, like, well, expenditures went up because gas went up. I'm going to really find out for you and give you those, that it connects the operations, because numbers are numbers. I'm going to tie the story to be like, yep, we're comparing 3 months, right, a quarter, but let me tell you the history behind that, what's going on, to really measure that up for you.
Just to help. So say, I understand you're doing, fiscal quarter. It may be better if you do each one as a fiscal quarter to date. So when you're doing your second quarter, we're not just looking at those 3 months, but rather the 6 months ending at the end of the second quarter, because that will also capture some of that timing, right? Like, whereas it might be low in the first quarter and high in the second quarter, but if you're always looking at, right, quarter to date, you're going to capture some of that timing.
Cum to date.
Yes.
Oh, cum to date.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We can model that and just, I'd like to model that just to see the differences and let me share that with you so you can look at it, aside from the meeting, so we can really see what it paints, what kind of story it's telling here.
Should make for less explanations for you too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so these are your revenues. If I could get, next slide. We wanted to, just in case we have visual learners, wanted to graphically represent what is happening in prior year versus current year, right, in collection rates, just graphically going, which is an interesting, depiction, right? It kind of just quickly shows us, hey, we're trending correctly at the same interval, right? That's just, we're not digging deep here. We're just kind of just trying to graphically show really quickly a snapshot. In these slides as well, we won't just present them here to just be like, hey, 15 and 18. We'll tell that story about what it's saying, especially when there's larger gaps, that you'll see, if it's head to head, I still will give you a little history just to, I don't like to put just a graph up and say, here you go. But it really was just to help to see the information in a different presentation and way and see if it poses any questions that will spark once you see any anomalies or discrepancies.
When you say collection rate, is this the percent of budget at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Next slide, please.
Is it always that low in the first quarter? 1
Yes.
or 2%?
It normally is. I got scared because, as you recall, I'm from Florida. So by this time, we're pretty fat. And I was like, we're missing $14 million. What's going on? We have 2 tranches in California, as I've quickly verse myself. So we'll be lean, and so expenditures are going to run high, right, because we're paying those bills. We got cash in the account, but we're waiting for those tranches to come in because we're closing the year as well and finishing and truing up that. And then we'll catch up. So we'll be lean at the beginning. You'll see some negatives that are really not true negatives, right? It's just as we get those tranches in. And then you'll see ourselves leveling out, more at this stage in first quarter, we're trying to measure, are we reaching those gaps and are we trending towards where we were saying, and while we wait for that to kind of cyclically catch up for us.
So for large capital improvement projects, you have no way of knowing exactly when you are going to get hit with a large bill.
Well, we do because, as it comes to project accounting, right? Ideally, if we train this staff correctly before fiscal year end close and our year-end schedule, we're pushing them to contact their vendors and be like, hey, I'm starting to close so we can accrue everything that's happening, at least have the best picture we can. When we open up the year, I've moved the carry forward. Normally you're receiving it or getting that report closer to November. I'm moving it up this year to October, right? To just get a better snapshot 2 months after the fiscal year opens, that carry forward and that impact to budget that. But you got to remember, we're not working on cash, but we have the cash for any expenditures, and we've accrued ideally as we train up the staff a little bit better to capture that and minimize that gap, right? So we don't have too many surprises. We're going to do the best that we can, right? Because in the background, you got procurement, review and POs, what needs to be open and closed. We're getting ready for calculations on carry forward to see what were the projected ending balances that will be our beginning balances for those projects to carry forward. So we should have a pretty good idea. Now, this is with the caveat that as we implement this right now, right, and that getting back to that cyclical accounting cycle, right? So bear with us on that. But we should not, and also remember that project accounting, we're not to the penny at that very minute, right? We're gonna true it up. Pretty much a lot of the true ups in government accounting will occur at the end of the year when we know what it is. So it's a little different, but we are tracking it. CIP, we are reviewing that. We are trending at a certain stage, and we don't have any huge overruns. But and what our staff does already, our departments are well aware of their vendors and relationships. They are keeping in play like, hey, I'm owed something. I should be getting billed for this, other than swings that are just unmeasurable would be something different that we'd address at that point if something happened.
Just a quick question. As you're doing your projected costs at the inception, do you structure it with purchase orders that are firm throughout the project? Or do you have like stages of, I guess it would depend on the project. So you've got your cost to date being actuals and your cost to complete being your actuals plus your unexercised or uncompleted purchase orders to completion. If you account for it that way, I'm not sure that.
Yeah, ideally, right? That's the common way to do that. But to be honest, we're, again, with transition, we're kind of retraining the staff again, retraining us as far as what our business practice is going to be, which is we're going to follow the norm methodology of that, right? So
as you budget your capital project, I suspect that you're doing it in segments, the various different elements that go together to.
Absolutely, and that kind of comes from, I'm sure, Department of Transportation practices, right? Phase of construction per quarter mile, right? We're doing phase one, we're, laying down fiber optics and asphalt and things, absolutely. To be completely transparent, these are things we're starting to lay down on how we're gonna, inherit what we have and cleaning that up a little bit more so it's much more transparent and clear to the staff because they do as best as they can, right? And now kind of getting that system, them understanding the process that we need, how they're connected to finance and in closing procedures. And we got great support from the department. So I think you'll like the end product with that there'll be much more understanding on how important they are, in the whole process, not just us, recording what's going on. I think the theme of the whole thing is to be proactive versus reactive at this point, and we will ahead.
Thank you.
Last month, I had suggested that we provide some sort of an analysis of the capital improvement projects to see which ones were done within budget, which one went over the budget, and if so, how much? Do you think you'll have something for a presentation next month, or is that going to take some more time?
Well, you know, Vice Chair Jesse, I never forget what you say. So in a couple of slides right here, we got a preamble for your CIP review. And anticipated in the October report is to see one of the things that did happen from reviewing, and as I kind of worked with the team as to what we were going to present, is that, remember, based on control and what we can do as a government, we will not have an overrun, you know, or they are not allowed to procure or move forward or put something if there is no budget available. So we won't have overruns to where we'll be $1 million off. It may be a budgetary overrun because we haven't allocated that budget, like carry forward I mentioned before. So I wanted to confirm that to you as far as our process, that unlike in the private sector where sometimes, you know, if things don't catch up correctly, you spent too much labor and everything like that and you didn't calc up, we can't proceed just like that and say, hey, we had $1 million overrun without permission to make that expenditure. So there's a level of confidence there, but I'm going to put that, you know, like I said, this 30,000 foot view of CIP, and then kind of see what the necessity is. Reason being too, I wanted to be resourceful in your time. I didn't want you to be in the pennies and cents. We wanted to give you a good confidence that the management of it is happening, and you know, it's been a while, but I don't want to return to the bean counter days of to the penny. I like to round to the next $1 million these years. So, but I think you'll get a good snapshot of that and what you're looking for. But in a couple slides, you'll see that in the CIP side.
Thank you.
Again, some of the things we talked about, the collection rates here, graphically depicted. And as you can see, we made some notes right here. This is just aesthetically, we're trying it out if this is good enough to say, hey, why is nothing in the capital improvement? I don't see nothing. Quarter and journal entries are not posted. Just, you know, a quick snapshot, some quick explanations. If there's any other additional anomalies or something, like I said, worth noting, I will note them for you and have them there, you know, so you can visually see and request any other information that is the pleasure of this commission. Next slide is now we're moving over to expenditures, of course, in the millions, same, you know, thought process. I've noted that, you know, if we're going to do the revenue side, commensurate to budget and actual at the same exact period, we'll do that because this is set the same way that revenue is right now, commensurate to the annual budget. We put them in major category. So we reported it in general fund expenditures in major categories like personnel, fringe, as you can see, M&O, equipment, contracts, and then internal services is your traditional ISF and capital outlay. And of course, all other expenditures, again, footnoted, things like pension debt and other financing uses are things that are included in the other expenditures. And that's for your general fund focus. Then the segue to the other ones, we kind of got, again, a little bit pulled back 30,000 feet again to special revenues, your capital improvement funds, and fiduciary and internal, giving you an overall view. And we'll make those adjustments, as you've noted, to look at it within period to period, you know, at the same interval, prior year and current. Next slide, sorry. Same thing, or, you know, in finance, we whatever we do to the left, we do to the right. And so general expenditures and any other expenditures that we've reported on top in your table will be graphically depicted again. As you can see, these are the notes that you could expect, right? Equipment and M&O, what happened there, mostly due to the timing of software. Here's your delta of $98,000. It explains it, gives you a good synopsis. And if you have any updates or additional information that, you know, you'd like us, we would take that from there and then provide you that so, you know, we can be efficient and timely with your responses if there's additional information you'd like. Same thing, capital outlay, you know, a quick example, there's some invoice timing. You know, we also drove what is driving it, police vehicles, consulting services in the capital outlay category. And so this is what you can expect for both revenue and expenditures, you know, and footnoted for you, trying to present to you the significant drivers and material on anything that's material. Next slide, please. Oh, same thing, right? So just special revenue funds, your capital, continuing on that bottom section of the table now here has your notes as to what is occurring that's driving those net changes between and within the funds. In capital improvement, you can see, hey, there's some increase due to pickleball courts, the slurry that happened. So at this year, what that is telling you, sorry, is that right now we had these capital improvements that happened where nothing was happening at the same time last year. So therefore, that's what's causing the variance, not that we don't like to spend money. Enterprise funds, same thing, internal service funds and fiduciary all pretty much trending as expected, and no additional notes needed for that. Next slide, please. Is that it? Okay. Now, here's the one that, we want you to think about it, really give us some feedback because we table this all the time, but I think it's super important that fund balance is one of those things in government finance and accounting that people really struggle with because they hear it, they know it, they have the concept, but it seems as though we're doing calculus 3. And quite frankly, it's just, hey, what are our inflows? What are our outflows? And what's left over, right, that's going to go to reserve. Then we have the commitments, such as in the general fund, we should be keeping a percentage of operating in order to keep the wheels on in case something happens. In this case, $8.3 million should be there. We want to give you that satisfaction that reserves are trending as they should, that budget is aligned, actuals are coming in, right? And where do we stand at that moment? Negatives don't scare us, remember, because at this juncture, like I said, I'm just kind of pulse checking. We haven't done a lot of entries. Act first, just developed, we're posting. So the adjustment doesn't mean we have no money, right? It's just the booking of items in the general fund because we have our reserves. And also remember that fund balance incorporates things that will never be liquid. This is not just your cash position, right? This is all the things that buildings, assets, minus liabilities, but we wanted to give you a good synopsis of an estimated, and I'm going to say estimated so many times, because it is not audited, right? Because those adjustments aren't made that are necessary towards the end of the year, but it gives you a good idea as to what we're projecting to end on. So you'll have the general fund. We've decided on maybe special revenue funds and enterprise funds to give you an idea. It's just a very hard reporting mechanism because we don't want to create more concern where there is no concern, right? Because of the adjustments that need to happen that don't normally happen with the reporting cycle that we have. So, definitely take this back tonight and kind of think about it. What is it telling you? Give us any feedback if this is great. Some of your local sister cities, they put it on a graph and kind of show you, hey, here's our actuals, here's our budget, here's our reserves. That's one way to depict it too. So if you want to look at some other examples, if you find value in this, we're kind of just throwing this idea around, but I thought it was important for you to have your reserve policy or your reserve balances. Where I'd like to take this from here, once we settle in on how to present this, is to tell you pretty much for every dollar earned, how much is going into reserves. And I think that's valuable to our residents, and I think it's valuable to you. So if we make $1, are we putting away 60 cents of it? And how is that dollar being made? Where is it going as far as outflow? So that's the end all be all goal, just to be, again, transparent, provide information that creates trust, and understanding that we are, stewards of the city's money and making sure that we're reporting it correctly. Yes, sir.
A couple things. Would there be any value to having a total at the bottom of this? Is this all of our fund balances? So then we'd have the total of all of them?
We could, yeah, we do.
And the reason I ask is because if you do total each of the columns, they're not negative except for at the end of August 31st. So then that begs the question, which you partially answered, is there any concern over having a ending balance that's negative? And if so, Does that just represent information that hasn't been entered yet? Or is there other sources of funds to cover the shortfall?
Yeah, it does. Some of it does have to do with timing. Others is, for example, on your enterprise funds, the way that they have OPEB liabilities reported. For example, you'll see if you look at your budget where you have that table that has beginning fund balance, revenues, expenditures, transfers in, transfers out, ending. You'll see some big numbers like in uplands and tidelands, and you'll note that I started putting footnotes on it, which explain that, hey, at the way enterprise funds are reported, for example, for OPEB, the liability is reported for everything if it were to cash out right now, not just for the period. So let's say, our OPEB liability for uplands is $10 million, it is reported right now, but really that $10 million is spread through multiple fiscal years, right? So then we back it out. And then you actually have a positive fund, fund balance, reserve. So we note that for you. We could do that definitely here using that same format, because, that, like I said, I didn't want to cause any alarm, but I wanted to kind of show you too that we were reporting this at this interval, what it looks like before adjustments and all the jazz that we do behind the scenes as well.
I would ask my fellow commissioners if they think there might be some value added to that. And I also don't want to, I want to say real quick, I think this is fantastic. It looks really, really good, and it's pretty easy to follow. I'm sure it took a lot of work to make this happen. So I don't want to add a bunch of more work on top of that, but to the extent it's not a lot of extra work, something like that may be helpful too.
No, absolutely. We'll note it to look at it. We've been kind of brainstorming and throwing around ideas. And I think that's where we got to this consensus, with the team that, we wanted to get your feedback versus coming in here and just presenting a report, and that way, come October's meeting, we've taken those items and it's a smoother transition to get this reporting right and valuable for you. So.
Do you expect you would be presenting some form of this to council as well? Either?
I don't see why not. I mean, it comes to the commission, the right thing. I mean, we do share and they have record of what we present. I did advise the city manager we were going to be presenting something. And so once I had your feedback and the feedback of the entire commission, I was going to share with the city manager, kind of see what the next approach is, what he likes and doesn't, and or any suggestions from him too. So we got well-rounded reviews on it. Next slide, please. All right, so capital improvement program, we obviously confirmed and talked with our CIP manager, Jesse, who was completely helpful to give us a good summary and highlight just to get the appetite of this commission as to what's relevant, what's useful. And so he provided a lot of, if not all, obviously the information, on the funding, the process, right? Just to understand a quick dashboard, and then just gave some information of the commission's role when it comes to this. So, definitely up for discussion, but want to walk you through what they felt would be relevant to you all. And then, open to whatever suggestions to kind of model some items to make sure, like I said, overall, didn't want to get you on the line item by line item. At this stage, just because, want to make sure you just had a good confidence on how CIP is running. Next slide, please. So here's the 23-28 CIP, just a summary of it, right? Giving you a count, 130 projects rotating out there, a total of 89.2 million. You will see the graphic depiction, as to what percentage of that, dollars are into what sewer projects, whatever it may be, public safety projects. Carryovers are listed there. How many of those projects are carrying over, which you should see align when we do adopted budget, and carry forward happens, right? So we're giving you a pulse check to know, hey, there's 5 new projects, that new funding, which should match your 23-24 budget for that year that it was budgeted on. Your carryover, 125 projects totaling 67.4 million, 38 of those with new funding. giving you that 125 between carryover and new funding, but new projects at another 5. So there's your 130 true up of projects and your $89.2 million, and it's spread as to where and how the funding is coming. Again, projects by category, just giving you an idea what types are out there, the percentage of total on it, based on the 130 projects that the city is running at this time. But this is just a quick summary. Again, more than 30,000 feet, maybe, 45,000 feet a little bit, but just to kind of open up that discussion. The CIP 5-year history, this is the growth over time for you. There's some drivers there that CIP has provided for us as to why there was some expenditure spikes, right? Very high level here, giving you 22, 23, Haysom Transit Center, some projects that are now entering into construction phase. And then in 21, 22, 20% of staffing, there was a decrease in that towards project completion, just kind of explaining that transition between 21 and 22, 22 to 23. And then the historic comparison between projects over, dollars, right? And what is likely to come down in the next, that next year, 5-year cycle. In the blue color, your projects in design, just by numbers and by fiscal year. And then your orange, same thing by fiscal year, but completed projects for you. The capital improvement program budget development, as you know, right, there are program requests. The city manager reviews them, not only just for a simple review, but actually for strategic alignment. Is it strategically aligned to the council's direction and what the residents of Redondo Beach are looking to see? The Budget and Finance, this commission, right, reviews it. Public Works also, their commission reviews it. And then there are the presentations to City Council and the public hearing to finally get to council approval. In addition to that, when just to add to you on the budgetary level, what happens after council approval, you've been very familiar with the final budget motion. So there are any adjustments to unallocated fund balance and how the spend is going to happen. That's when that happens, the budget motion letter, the final budget motion letter gets drafted, and then that money gets allocated as directed by council and agreed upon. So just kind of connecting that final piece. Some examples of that, you'll see in the budget, the final budget motion that came out, we had things like the John Parsons Art Fund, there was some fund balance there. Those projects were allocated over for things like murals by Big Lots, things of that nature. So, everything kind of aligns and transparently is listed out for the objectives of the council from, the review of the residents and what they'd like I said, projects completed or things that they'd like done. Again, they being council exercises, right? Going through the spending and purchasing rules, right? We have project managers overseeing at the project level. Your capital project manager and the finance department along, with purchasing, are monitoring the procurement process, contractual law, making sure that our vendors are, legit to do business with the city, making sure that things are trending, POs are up to level for the spend, right? Budget is in alignment, and any anomalies, right? They're all working together to pretty much accomplish the objective of moving along the project as scheduled, and being prepared for anything that could come up and, in the foreseeable future as much as they can. All budget changes. Here's that confirmation outside of 10% change order, that's that we have a 10% change order threshold. It has to go to council. We can't just approve change orders at any level or, at whatever time they want. They being council again receives and approves, accepts the complete report, right, for each completed public works project. This is apart from any ongoing maintenance related to these projects. Next slide, please. We have a CIP public dashboard. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's out there. And some of the things that CIP has outlined for us, it'll give you phases of the projects, right? You can filter it by category, types of projects, drainage, general. Again, it outlines the phase, gives you a graphic depiction, tells you the location of the project. It's, I think, a very neat feature, right? Because how many times do you hear a project, you're kind of like, I don't know, something's happening on Artesia, right? So this really connects you to it, gives you some visual, gives you some, obviously, construction and upcoming updates for the project. I think it's an invaluable tool. I mean, this is government transparency at its best.
And this is on our city website.
You can find it through the city website, yes. And we can actually get you the location. I'll have CIP listed for you. We can email you so you have it directly and don't have to go looking for it.
Thank you.
This raises a question, Wendy. Is it worth considering? First of all, I agree with Jason. I think this report is great. It's good for us. Is it possible to list it, to also list this on the website? Because I can see individuals being concerned about and interested in the same thing that we are.
Sure. I mean, we have some features that we use. I think it's more about the communication to let them know we're doing that. We got OpenGov dashboards that do this and report like financials. They report KPIs of the city, street levels. A lot of people just don't know that we have that out there. So we would definitely put this out there anyway. And anything that this commission gets or anything really in the city that is shared has to be out there, for the public to see. So we'd like to get this information, to them and stuff like that to know what you all are seeing, in the event they aren't at these beautiful meetings, or, like I said, just to continue on that push that we're doing to just be transparent as possible.
Well, I can see some folks knowing it was there and their eyes would glaze over and they wouldn't spend time looking at it. But there are other folks who might really be interested in seeing it.
Sure. We are working on the assistant city manager, their office. They're working on the website development with all of us to bring it up to speed, add more content, clean it up. So it's an exciting project. That it's kicked off already. Some departments have already had preliminary review where we'll have things. Finance is definitely one of those that you're going to see us kind of get dolled up and have things like financial policy out there for the residents or anybody that's going on a webpage to see, performance measures, KPIs. Those are the interesting things. How to do business, who we are, right? And get that word out there, and obviously use you all with people that to get that message out there too, that we have these tools out here that I think would be very helpful, even just people trying to get information to come to the council meetings and talk about something if they have concern over it. Next slide, please. The commission's role, for our incoming, and our existing commissioners, an advisory commission, right? We maintain a continuous study, right, of the sources of municipal revenue and methods of proper spending of public money. Really, really long way to say you are to advise us. We're partners in this thing to make sure that you have a level of confidence that the revenue sources are being applied to and used in the appropriate way and the intent of this city, and also by policy that we're in compliance. And really, like I said, be partners to help us provide that information, be the pulse of the city to get that message to us. What are the things that we may do better, so that we can always be, best practice leaders, industry leaders in this thing, and provide some of the best financial reporting and governmental transparency, and that really is this paragraph overall. Again, that's why I kind of stress that I want to avoid putting you in the weeds, just because I think your time is much more valuable, being able to give us, eventually what we're working towards, right? Those AI performance measures, and really bring this thing up to the 21st century, and just get better, leave it better than we found it. So that is just your commission role. CIP wanted to put it in there. There's other duties, of course, as directed by the city manager or the city council, as you know, through your ordinance. But again, just a reminder as we plateau to this next phase with the commission. Next steps, right, is to, of course, provide comments and recommendations for that 24-25 capital improvement program budget. There is no rest for the weary, and we project to begin 24-25 budget preparations as soon as Santa Claus makes his way here in Redondo Beach in January. You know, and mid-year is going to come quicker than nothing, and, you know, it's an exciting time because, you know, it feels like we were just doing budget a couple weeks ago. So, but it's coming, and I think
You actually were.
yeah, you know, but, you know, we're excited about that. So that's the next steps in capital. And I don't need to tell you the process of that as you're very intimate with it. But next slide, please. I forgot to put a thank you slide just to say, hey, questions or answers, but that's the idea. That's where we want to take you, you know, for reporting. You know, and any other comments or any advice you'd like to give us, feel free. That you know, it's your time for that.
Again, just underline the fact that this is a great report. I think you should expect that some of our comments will come after we start using it rather than tonight. This is the first time we've seen it. So once we begin using this, I feel certain you'll have some additional comments and suggestions.
Is there anything, if I may ask this commission, just, you know, that has always been maybe a concern that we need to focus on, that I wouldn't, you know, just know that, you know, it's not quite clear? I think I have some of the things just from our budget experience and things as far as, you know, some of you have shared like, hey, this is coming up, like CalPERS, things that I got that. But is there anything else that you feel would be relevant to this commission that could be reported on, you know, and we can just look at, or, you know, any issues that the city, you know, has had that you'd like maybe cleared, or, you know, that would help us if we're missing anything here.
I think just the timeliness of getting information, and this goes a long way towards that. I think sometimes in years past, we felt like we found out about things like large variances, for example, only when preparing the budget for the coming, or reviewing the budget for the coming year. Again, just being made aware of things sooner, which this seems to accomplish.
Very well.
I like the graph where you had kind of like your little, like your variance analysis boxes in there. So, so that's good. Roughly how much time did it take for you guys to prepare this?
Well, if you ask the team, I had many comments and versions and edits for them. They were
Okay.
patient enough with me. You know, I think it really wasn't about timing preparing it. This one was a little bit more labor intense because we had no, you know, we weren't copying and pasting anything, right? The team has done a tremendous job to build something that, again, could be easily, you know, taking information from our accounting system through like cubes, drop the data in, update, so that we have more time not to be putting tables together and making colors, but really learning what drove this quarter, right? And giving you some things that you, again, can have that level, because whether people believe so or not, I do require some sleep sometimes, and it'd be really nice to not do it at 2 a.m. and kind of think about where we're going. So the team, like I said, did a phenomenal job just creating something, again, that we're going to, you know, kind of drag and drop, look at it, analyze it, and also analyze it from a different perspective that is not just the finance director, right? It's really, you know, involving the analyst and getting their perspective, the assistant finance director, their perspective of what they find, because, you know, we got, you know, Doug and his years that I'm sure he'll find stuff. And every time we find something, it's like, what's this? He gives us the history to it. So everybody getting a little perspective, but really not spending a lot of time on the template. But this one, it took a little bit, a couple versions, had some accountants a little nervous about doing. Doug was trying to educate us on posting and time, right? You know, and so But hopefully with this format, the data, input is going to be pretty seamless, and shouldn't drastically change and take us hours. We didn't want to create something that, again, becomes just a piece of paper, something thrown that doesn't get read.
You might want to consider adding a page or a table for narratives. You had some explanation of, on some of these charts, of overages, both income and expense. But to the extent that we have something occurring in the life of the city or that affects revenue or expense that isn't mentioned in those charts, it'd be fine each quarter to have a paragraph or two of just simply comments about what went on.
Sure, absolutely.
Like an executive summary.
Okay.
Any more comments or questions? It was a good report. So I move that we approve the report as submitted by the finance director.
Second.
I think we should do, being it's a discussion item, we can do a roll call vote. Okay. Commissioner Conroy,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jesse,
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham,
Aye.
Commissioner Sherbin.
Yes.
Move on to the next item on the agenda. Item G, excluded consent calendar items. Are there any, Doug?
Actually, we're on to item K, member items and referrals to staff. So that'll be that's the next item. Anybody want to open up with any comments about or referrals?
We don't have any comments?
I'll start off. So this is my last meeting with the Budget and Finance Commission.
You didn't bring champagne or anything else?
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my profound gratitude towards Doug, Wendy, my fellow commissioners. It's been a real honor and privilege to serve and contribute to the city with all of you. So thank you all for that.
Thank you, sir.
We will miss you.
Yeah, thank you.
The champagne should be a requirement. Just in or out,
And I'll just add, I think that I just barely got to meet you too, but hey, if what you've been able to accomplish in your short tenure here and capped off with this report, I feel like the finance department for the city is in fantastic shape. So thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Appreciate it.
We wholeheartedly agree.
Any comments?
Any other comments?
We'll work our way through.
Wendy, I sent you a note on CalPERS, and I'd just like to, I don't want to go through that, but just to repeat, we really, I think, need to institute a policy where most of one meeting each year is based on that CalPERS presentation and discussion following that. And I would, last year we did it in December, so sometime October, November, December is whenever they get around to doing it. But I recall the report from them being not as complete as I would have preferred. I mean, I've been in investment consulting for a long time on both the CIO side and the consultant side. And they sort of fill the role of consultant and manager. But we didn't have as good a report or as detailed a report from them as I think we should have. For instance, I saw one piece in the investment press where the CIO of CalPERS was interviewed, and they were taking her to task over the returns for private equity and the fact that those returns were in sort of the lower half of industry, of private equity returns for similar types of funds. We've never had the opportunity to see that kind of detailed information, and I think we should. We don't have much control over it, but I think it's shirking our responsibilities if we don't see the data and at least have a way of commenting on that data. Because if there's a chance that things could be going really good or really bad relative to the performance we would expect, for instance, just on quarterly reports, we need to see that. We're not going to make any decisions based on a quarter's returns, but it is our responsibility to know that and to be able to at least comment on it. So I would simply encourage, you're probably going to be the one to talk to the person at CalPERS and schedule it. You should, I would hope you would focus on asking them for a more detailed report and a more thorough report than we've gotten in the past.
Absolutely, and I'm due to, we were just talking with, Doug, and he was gonna give me his insight on, painting the picture as he normally does for me, and some ideas, related to your email, Doug, if you'd like to.
I just want to comment on that. Of course, Wendy wasn't here at the time, Stephanie, Hanrei, they're all new here. Last year, we had someone from CalPERS come and do a short presentation in regards to the city and its position. That was back in December of 22. I know we wanted to kind of move that presentation up again, if at all possible, early in the year. I took the steps of trying to contact CalPERS and see if we can schedule something again.
They're not really responsive. I've written sent an email to the fellow who was here.
Yes.
Asking for updates on information, and that goes in some file other than the responding file.
Sure. So we briefly talked about that in terms of who to contact. I was in touch with him a little earlier in the year about trying to plan going forward. I recently found out he's no longer with CalPERS.
That's why he hasn't responded to my email.
I've elevated that. I've completed their request to have someone else come out. So we are currently in the process of having that request elevated to the supervisor there, and they're going to let me know who the next person will be filling in. We're kind of starting from scratch again now because I don't know their situation of how many presenters they've had. We've had that one person come a couple times here. He's been there for several years. I don't know about any replacement or anything like that. I'm still trying to find that out.
I'm sure they have someone in an area that we'd call client relations, because they have dozens, if not hundreds,
Sure.
of clients in the state, cities, counties, and so forth that they're managing their money. So
Sure.
they're getting that same kind of request from
Yes,
a lot of places, and
definitely.
they're responding in the way they should. It's just that we haven't been getting quite the.
Sure. So, we'll keep on that. I need you to have a little patience again. Once I hear back, I would like to fill them in on at least showing them what was presented in the past. We can, once they come out, we can, it's a work in progress in terms of what you guys really want to see. But the first step is trying to get something scheduled, trying to find out if they're going to have someone available and when. So that's just kind of a brief update of what's going on with that.
And Commissioner Woodham, if I may, on the in search of maybe more detailed reports, what you didn't see or are looking for is more in-depth into the diversification of where we are, or what would be your objective? That
Normally what you see on a quarterly or annual report is line-by-line detail. For instance, we've got U.S. equities, non-U.S. equities, emerging market equities. In private equity, we've got venture capital, buyouts, and so forth. We should at least see a single line for each of those showing the return for the year or the period they're talking about. They don't do quarterly reporting in that detail, but on a quarterly basis, we're simply going to get the number for total return, which is good. But on an annual basis, that sort of detail by category, and to the extent that we can get it for the total fund, it's important to know how they've done relative to comparable funds. for instance, you've got CalPERS, CalSTRS, LA County. It'd be helpful without us having to go doing the legwork if they could provide some kind of chart showing their return versus those funds, or simply a percentile return for what we've had. Are we in the 50th percentile? Are we top of the chart or bottom of the chart? Again, given our position and our size, that's the other thing. They've never indicated to us that I know what our portfolio is. They manage funds totaling over $400 billion. They're, again, dozens or hundreds of clients, but they still have to allocate a piece of that $400 billion fund to each client. Otherwise, they can't give us the funding ratio. So funding ratio is the current value of your liabilities versus the market value of your fund. So they have that data, but that's data that we also should know. So that's sort of the more detailed information that I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, I figured that's kind of what you wanted. I'm kind of used to that, and, I just didn't want to go searching into something that, could have been different. So we'll definitely look at that, I've always known, and anytime I've ever asked and we're not getting a certain reporting, it's just because it hasn't been asked to do that way, and whoever maybe negotiated or the need of whatever commission and council was at the time, that's normally what I encounter, because, as well as I do that you're churning for, that kind of money. You better have reporting as to where it's going, you know what I mean? So we'll definitely search to that. And then, like Doug mentioned, he's coordinating to kind of get back on that till after that transition that they've had. But absolutely, and like I said, we have a discussion just to go through it and strategize how we'll achieve that. But it is noted.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent suggestion.
Yeah, I'm just going to have a very short and succinct comment. I couldn't be more pleased with the finance group. I think the presentations that we're getting the analysis is terrific, and the presentation is very, very, very good. And your responsiveness is just second to none. I mean, you guys are right on top of that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're all doing a terrific job.
I just forgot to note, just so you know, while it may seem I've spoken a lot, my goal is to the friendly faces that you've met is also give them some exposure so that you have different presenters, and specialties as they get a little bit more, savvy and comfortable with our reporting and what we're doing. So expect to see them there because, this machine doesn't run by one. It definitely, couldn't be done with everybody here, but trying to give them some specialties and exposure so you get different deliveries on information.
It would be interesting also if we could get them to talk a little bit about what they do within the finance group, so it would help us to understand a little bit more about the mechanics of what really comes together to get this information and
Sure.
for us. So
Yep.
that'd be nice to hear too.
In line with that, we did this once before, and since we're going to have several new, or at least 2 new members on the commission, at the next meeting, let's plan on taking 5 or 10 minutes just to go down the line of the commissioners and your staff as well, and give us 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes on background, what you've done.
How you ended up here?
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a terrific idea.
Absolutely. We can definitely do that. So we get acquainted. I think the third question we should ask is, why do you keep coming? I'm thankful they keep coming back. So yeah, it's a great team. And, but we'll definitely do that. So we've noted that 5, segue so we can get acclimated and acquainted and, with peas and carrots.
I'm sorry, I didn't make note on our discussion item. Just for the record, there were no public comment on Zoom or e-comments on that. Sorry about that.
Motion to adjourn?
So move. Second. You motion? Did you make? Okay, second. Any opposed?
Okay.
You can adjourn the meeting.